You're listening to Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at SBT Songs, or check us out at chrisblair.com. Hey everybody, Chris Blair here, and this is another episode of Stories Behind the Songs. And this week I sat down with Marv Green. Marv's got so many cuts. I read all through them when we sat down together, and it was a list so long that I could not get through all of them without taking a breath. It's just incredible the success this guy's had. He is from California, moved to Nashville in 1993, and it took him about 5 months to get signed to his first publishing deal, which he's still with today at Warner Chappell. After getting signed, it was about 5 years after that he had his first #1 with George Strait. And in this episode, we're going to talk about tons of the stories with the songs that he's written. Songs that he's got out with guys like Morgan Wallen, George Strait, Lonestar, Bon Jovi, just so many great things this guy has done. We're also going to talk about his take on the difference between Nashville in the 90s and Nashville today, tips for writing with some of the greats, how to build connections in the city and what he did when he first moved here, and also how he still stays active working in the industry, writing and putting out hits every day. He was actually leaving right after this episode to go to another write. So he's just a great dude. He's been playing the listening room since day one in 2006 when we started. And I love this guy. I love this episode. Hope you do too. As always, if you do, hit that subscribe button, share it with your friends. We love when you spread the word because we can't do this without you. And the more people that know about it, the happier it makes us. So keep doing that. Let us know what you think, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's get to it. Here's my buddy, Marv Green. Hey everybody, here is another episode of Stories Behind the Songs. I'm your host, Chris Blair, and today I am with Marv Green. How you doing, buddy?
I'm well. Good morning.
Man, I'm so excited. I'm gonna pull this out and read it for everybody out there listening because this is just, we'll see if I can do it in one breath. But you have, you're from California,
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna get into the whole story of how you moved here in '93.
Sure.
But you have got songs that you've written for George Strait, Merle Haggard, Willie Nelson, Reba, Jewel, Eric Church, Morgan Wallen, Dierks Bentley, Lonestar, Faith Hill, Brookes and Dunn, Tim McGraw, Kenny Chesney, Carrie Underwood, Bon Jovi, Jason Aldean, Chris Young, Dustin Lynch, Jody Messina, Leanne Womack, Sara Evans. I have to breathe. I couldn't do it. Martina McBride, Jessica Andrews, Kelly Prickler, Brad Paisley, Rodney Atkins, Billy Currington, Danny Goki, Joe Diffie. I could go on and on, but man, you've got a list.
It's crazy.
It's
just, you know, it starts with one and then it just hopefully, one by one, you add. And, a lot of them are like, I can't believe that happened, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also have a very unique story in, everybody talks about like, hey, Nashville's a 10-year town. And a lot of times it takes a lot longer. You got your first deal like within 6 months or so.
Correct. That's good. Yeah. So, real quick, my brother and I were playing, we had a band, ever since we got out of high school, of sorts, a country band, a covers band. And prior to moving to Nashville, I entered a True Value GMC Country Showdown with him. And so that kind of got us, it got us out of California. The finals were in Branson, Missouri. It was filmed with Kenny Rogers and Doug Stone. But my introduction and my connection to Nashville was I met a DJ from California who befriended us, and he said, if you ever go to Nashville, I do know someone there. And so I just kept that, in the memory bank. And then once I got settled, I was lucky. I landed here and I waited tables, answered phones for JCPenney catalog, but I was also instantly writing 100%ers and trying to figure out how I could record them inexpensively. A great guy, Cam King, a Texan, recorded me for cheap on 8-track. And once I had 6 together that sounded good within the first, 4 months that I've been here, I reached back out to Tom Kifuri, a DJ in California. I said, who did you know here in Nashville? You said you knew someone, and I wouldn't mind, I've got some music I'd love to share. And he goes, my wife's cousin is a guy named Scott Hendricks. And I believe in doing your homework, and I certainly did mine. I knew who all the producers were and a lot of the writers too. And so I said, well, oh my gosh, I know who Scott Hendricks is. Is there any way you could call him and tell him I'd love to drop him off some music. And so he said, sure. And, I didn't know at this time Scott was starting a publishing company called Big Tractor, a venture with Warner Chappell. And so, it was timing. The right songs hit the right desk at the right time. Scott had told Tom, I'll get back to him within a couple months. I'm real busy. I'm producing records and stuff. But Scott actually called me like 3 days later and said, "Man, I'd love to meet you. I love what I hear here." So,
yeah.
So that expressed it for me. I mean, it's interesting you said 10-year town. When I moved here in '93, I bought a little clunker car at a used car dealer and ship, and he said, "Well, just nothing's going to happen for 5 years." So when I moved here, it was a 5-year town.
And it took 5 years for your first number one, right?
Ironically, the guy says nothing's going to happen. Now, I got signed within, 5 months, but I did not have, so 5 years to the date almost of moving here, I get a number one song with George Strait, so that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
So for me, I guess it was a 5-year town.
Yeah. Well, going back to California, were you in music your whole life?
Early on, before even instruments, my brother and I, Art Green's my brother, and he runs cattle on a big ranch in California now, but he still sings and plays. But my brother Art and I, we had this little blue, and a lot of us had them, these little blue suitcase record players. And so, he just popped the top, and they still make them. But so we got handed down a bunch of 45s from relatives. So we had everything from Elvis to Don Gibson to Johnny Cash, the Sun, little singles, a little bit of the Hag, Hank Sr. And so we instantly, this before we even had guitars. So we're talking like second and third graders, and we're just kind of sat in the room and just put one record on a time, and just kind of loved music. And then kind of graduated from that to buying our first LPs. The first LP I ever bought was Waylon Jennings' Honky Tonk Heroes, and I think his was one of Hag's records. And so and then it went from that to going, wait, okay, so he's singing them, but then there's these names on the liner notes, like songwriters. And so that kind of pulled our ear. We fell in love with the music of John Denver. And somewhere along the line there, my uncle brought this guitar. This is a 1927 Martin parlor guitar. My uncle, when we'd have we'd have barbecue grill out get-togethers, and he'd have this, and he'd play a little. It was strung gut strings, so he'd play like a little flamenco, and just we'd be like, "Oh, that's cool." And I don't know, between that and John Denver and some of the acoustic music that was happening, we just got guitars,
Yeah.
And my brother got better than I did at first, and he had a little bit stronger of a country voice, and I kind of. Okay, and here's another thing. I mean, you can laugh, but Hee Haw was on every Saturday night.
Yep.
And I mean, Hee Haw brought into our house, because, you're talking about Channel 3 came in good. Other than that, we didn't have 1,000 channels.
Yeah.
It brought a new country artist to our house every Saturday night, and we're like, oh, man, there he is, And so that had some magic to it. Casey Kasem. I vividly remember, this is all by the time I'm driving already, 16, but I remember, washing my car and listening to Casey Kasem and going, gosh, it would be amazing to have a song on this countdown, and so it's kind of all that stuff, and it builds. We entered I was an 8th grader, we entered a contest, a local, talent show, and we won that, and little things like that. Started playing weddings and get-togethers, and then by the time we're out of high school, we're playing in bars.
Yeah,
I
love it. So you get to town, you do the country show down in Branson. You end up getting to town, you get signed to Warner Chappell. And then, walk me through, what was it like for you when you started building your camp?
Well, again, the beauty is, so Scott, he didn't really have an office, but he said, go report to Warner Chappell and just show up there every day. and meet, mix, go have coffee and meet some writers. So just showing up there and meeting people, and, you know, again, very blessed that about the same time I land at Warner Chapel, Michael Knox lands as a song plugger. And here, you know, here's this guy who's on fire already and just loves it. He's like Rusty Gaston, you know, he knows what he wants to do, and he's just great at it. And that energy instantly, you know, he started helping me get with certain people. I befriended some songwriters that already had hits, like Susan Longacre, Steve Bogard, Jeff Stevens. And so, you know, you don't get to write with them at first, but I think that FaceTime and just showing up, and then, you know, they hear a little chatter or they hear a piece of something you write, and they're like, oh, yeah, we should get together sometime. So that starts to happen. And then you get out and you play places like the Listening Room, and you meet. I mean, I met Amy Mayo and Chris Lindsay just out and about, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you start developing your camp that way, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you say you're more on the lyric side or melody?
I'm both. You know, yesterday is a great example, and I love it when this happens. I've only written a couple songs now with Billy Montana, and Billy and I have been in this town forever. But yesterday is a great example because we were just like talking about a certain artist, and we started just I had an idea, and we didn't even pick up our guitars. We sat for an hour just talking about the lyrical concepts of where it might go. And I love writing that way, and I love words. So sometimes it starts that way with an idea, and you go, okay, this is what the chorus is lyrically going to say, come up with some lines that you love. And then that's kind of the fun part, to go, where does that lead you musically? Because every word or phrase, when you say them, have a melody to them or a rhythm. So I love writing that way, but then sometimes it's literally just, you know, picking up your guitar and something that I thought only lie, but I found it on something. You know, you might just kind of jam for a minute and record it, and then come back and go, oh, well, that sounds like whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So I like writing both ways, and whether it's guitar or piano or mandolin or something, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, some people are very strong lyrically, some people are more melodic, and I like to do both. I like to play, you know.
Yeah.
But I also love words, and I love poetry. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into some of that. I mean, you've got a huge list, so let's talk about the stories behind the songs. Like, what is a song or a couple that you've got a great story of how you came up with it, the whole experience of writing it, how it got to the artist, and all of that? Like,
yeah, I mean, every song's different. One of my George Strait hits, we kind of just snuck into it. I had a few. By
the way, I'm going to interrupt you because that's just, for everybody listening out there, you don't hear that phrase a whole lot. One of my George.
Oh, well, I only have a few, but yeah, I'm happy to have them. It's not like Dean Dillon, who has, like, you know, records full of George Strait hits. But you know, and this is a good example. I was just playing with words, and just sort of the natural order of things. You know, sun shines, clouds rain, train whistle blows, guitars play. Just, I had these little things, you know, like that, and I was leading to, it's in a different key, but I was leading to, like, when I had that bit, and I was like, and I love you. And Jim Collins, my co-writer, a Texan, he's like, we cannot call this song I Love You. And I was like, all right. And I said, why? I Love You is not a bad, well, it's not, you know, if it's a George Strait or a thing like that, and we didn't know George was going to do the song, that was an example, he's just not going to say, leave it at that. And I was like, all right, well, then there's another piece to it, you know? And so we're just jamming, and I was like, well, maybe it just comes naturally. And he's like, no, it just comes natural. And I said, well, my English teacher might be a little upset with me because it just comes naturally. I go, but sing it. And so he sings, it just comes natural. I'm like, so, so we kind of, when you're writing about a subject matter and you just kind of let the melody and the words kind of dance with each other. And that's a good example. And now you listen back, you're like, well, he would have never sang It Just Comes Naturally as good as he sang It Just Comes Natural.
Yeah.
So that's, a good example. Sometimes it starts with a title like Wasted, song that was recorded by Carrie Underwood. I had the concept, but for me, I had part of that chorus, and but I was reflecting on my life. Like when I started writing the lyric idea to that, I was writing about if I stay where I was, and again, beautiful country, I love my home, and I still call Southern California my home, Santa Barbara County, beautiful, but I knew if I stayed there, I would be playing in bars forever, and my life and my, creative, whatever, gift or whatever, it would be wasted. And so I was just thinking, like, if I stay here, I was reflecting on back then, and just like, if I don't do something, my life is going to be wasted. And so I had written that piece. I brought it in, and I kind of shared it with Troy Burgess and Hillary Lindsay. Well, I could tell instantly Hillary thought I was talking about breaking up with a person when I was really breaking up with a town, but I didn't tell her. And so she started taking off on the first verse about this girl, standing at the back door. She tried to make it fast. One tear hit the hardwood, it felt like broken glass. And so I was like, so she thinks this song's about a breakup, but let her run with it. And so we did, and then I hit her back with the line about pouring raindrops through a cloud. And so anyway, it just kind of built that way, and Troy started coming in with that, that kind of tempo, more of a tempo vibe. So, it's the beauty of co-writing. You kind of share a little piece, but you don't tell your co-writer everything because they may bring something entirely different. Yeah. Another case in point, I have a song on the Morgan Wallen's first double album he did, and it's called Silverado for Sale. And so, that song, I had the title, I had the idea, but I kind of shared where my head was. And my head was like, well, we're going to sell this truck because, again, I'm chasing my dream, and I can't afford to keep the truck. And Dallas was like, we're not gonna sell a vehicle and a song to move to Music City. And I said, oh, really? I said, well, why are we selling the truck? Yeah. And this is what happens in writing rooms sometimes. He goes, what if we sell the truck to buy a diamond ring? And I was like, oh, that's pretty good, And so we go down that path, So, yeah. And then you just, something like Creepin'. I mean, Eric, it's the second song Eric and I wrote. We wrote a little bit on the first record and didn't make the project, but he was working on the Chief record, and he shows up, and he's a little late, a little hungover, and he's just got this little bit, and, he's like, well, I just got part of a verse thing, and it's like a honeybee beating on my screen door, got a little buzz, and my head is sore. From my bed, I can feel the sun, Lord, round here, the morning comes. I mean, he had at least that, and he might have said, like, creepin' or something. I was like, did you just say creepin'? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay. And so, don't know where the song's going, and we just hop in and go, you know, and the song takes us there. And that song, written on a couple of acoustic guitars, and then, I kind of forgot about it. And then Eric's wife called and said, wait till you hear what they're doing in the studio to the song. And I was like, what are they doing? Last time I heard it was like a couple of guys by a whiskey still in the Appalachian Mountains or something. And so it's a big old rock record. I was like, what? And so then I heard it, and I was like blown away by what Eric and Jay Joyce did to that song, in the studio.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah. So every song's different. I mean, that's the people, and I love to write songs by myself, but I just think about these songs and how they wouldn't have been as good. I could try to write a lot by myself, but it's fun. It's songwriting is super fun if you get in the room with somebody, then it's really working, you know.
Yeah.
And it's music. I mean, you're playing off each other, you know?
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Sennheiser microphones. When we first started this podcast, we were using some older microphones, and Sennheiser came in and sponsored us and gave us some MK4s and 914s. And I mean, I'm telling you, it's made all of the difference in the world. We love these microphones. We use them at the listening room as well. And I just can't say enough great things about them. Go check out Sennheiser.com. If you are into music in any way, their microphones are hands down the best on the planet. Go check them out, Sennheiser.com. And thank you, Sennheiser, for the support and the sponsorship. We love y'all. Walk me through, one of the biggest hits and, a song that was one of my favorites growing up, Amazed by Lonestar.
Yeah. Well, this is 1998. And, I am living, there's these apartments, the Villager East, I guess they are, or West. It's one of the Villagers. It's in Green Hills, right next to where Starbucks is now. I was living there. I just met Tasha, my wife, and Amy Mayo and I had been, we're starting to have some success, but I remember I met Amy at a party, and I just thought she was crazy. She's this Gaston, Alabama girl. and I don't know, she was funny. She's like, we met at a party, and next thing I know, we're sitting out in her car listening to music and talking about writing. And then, we went on to have like a Joe Diffie cut together, and we were on Faith's second record with a song called Me, an album cut. But anyway, we hung out. We went to Exit Inn. We went to, back then, 328 and Skull's Rainbow Room and those kind of places, and just listened to music and hung out. And she was around me enough and saw some of the girls I was dating, or at least spending a little time with, and she knew when I met Tasha that, I'd met the one. And so she called me one night, and she's like, Marv, I want to write a love song tonight, and kind of laughing. And I was like, okay. And it was kind of late. I said, you want to write like tonight? And she goes, yeah, get over here. And I said, okay. So I get over there, and I was like, okay, we're going to write a love song. Good. And then Chris Lindsay pulls up about the same time I do. And I said, oh, so the three of us are going to write a love song. And then I started putting it together that Amy and Chris were falling in love with each other. And so, I walked into the house, and she had all these candles lit, and, we had some bottle of wine, and just kind of, that was just three people that were just falling in love, me with Tasha and those two. And it was just real. We didn't, it's funny because that song, Chris was playing piano, I had my guitar, and we're just trying to figure out where to go melodically, off of that verse, off of the G. And the next thing I know, one of us hits like this B flat bit. And then we were just having fun with it, just going, what can we do that's different? And so then we do a key change in the chorus. And I remember the other thing about Amy, and back then, like writers, we all used like the hot studios. Back then, County Q was like the place. Like you had to get time at County Q in Berry Hill because those demos were working, and it's kind of like, and then it was like Jamie's place over at the Ruckus Room. But there was a studio, but you had to book it out. There was no way you could now you could probably write a song on Monday and get it into a studio on Wednesday. But back then it wasn't happening. Yeah. So you had to book it out like a month, 2 months. So Amy had a session the next day, and she needed one more song. That's really why she called me to write a love song. But I'm glad she did, And we were in the studio, and it was like when we get to that, every little thing that you do. And we were we kind of were mumbling different stuff, there, and we finally landed Amazed by You, or Amazed something, and so it was our publisher, we weren't sure what exactly to call it, and our publisher just said, just call it Amazed, not we all know McCartney's got Baby I'm Amazed, and, blah, blah, blah. Just call it Amazed, keep it just. And so we just said, okay, let's just call it Amazed. But I honestly, and the other thing is we were also writing with a guy, a great friend of mine, Bill Luther. And so, my voice is okay. It's, it can lean towards Tom Petty or a Jackson Browne thing every now and then, but it wasn't right for the song. Bill Luther was around, who's a soulful kind of little bit of Rod Stewart, a little bit of McGraw, a little bit of, I don't know, like Meatloaf or not even, he's just a soul, just, super, just feel it when he sings. Lee Brice does that to me too. But anyway, so Bill was around. We talked Bill into singing the demo, and next day, and back then you just instantly get it mixed. So we mixed it, and I remember driving home going, I love it. I don't know who in the heck is going to record it, because it sounded, it didn't sound like what was happening at the time. It was, pretty progressive for what was happening at that time. So, and then, next thing we know, Dan Huff hears it, and he takes it to Richie and Lonestar, and the rest is history. I mean, that song, I always say, a lot of times with my career, songs, they know where they're supposed to go, and that song knew, and I can't imagine anybody else singing it, now, other than Richie, I mean, I've heard other versions, but,
Yeah, his voice, he killed it. I've got several things in my basement that have been given to me over the years, and there's a Richie Keach and Dean Sams gave me a framed Amazed lyric, all the lyrics, and the whole band signed it. And I've got that hanging in my basement. It's one of the coolest things that's been given to me. But I've always loved that song, man.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, I still get, this is Marv Green, he wrote Amazed. I was like, well, yes, it's true. I've written some other stuff, but hey, if that's the connection, and it's funny because that song transcends, because a great example, my daughter is going to college in South Florida, so we moved her in this fall, and so it's frantic move in, hurry up, we got a window of time, and I had a second and I was starving, so I went back to the hotel for a minute just to grab Stella forgot something, and so I went back to grab it, and I said to the front desk, I said, hey, I'm starving. Is there do you know a good little sandwich joint right around the corner somewhere? They're like, oh yeah, go see Louis. He's over here around the corner. It's French bakery sandwich. I said, all right. So I go around, I walk in this place, and there's this French man talking to somebody else, and it's not real busy. And so I walk in. He stops his conversation. This man has never seen me. He stops the conversation. He looks at me. He goes, you are a writer. And I said, yeah. He goes, what do you write? And I said, I write songs. And he goes, I knew you wrote something. I just knew it. And I was like, okay. And so we talked for a minute. And so he's like going, well, okay, so what kind of songs? And I said, well, songs for George Strait, Blake Shelton, Tim McGraw, Faith Hill, Carrie Underwood, Eric Church. He's like, nothing registered. He's like, okay, well, I don't know these things. He goes, but I know you're a writer. And so I said, there's a chance you might know something. And so in the middle of the cafe, I go, every little thing that, and he looks at me, goes, stop. And he goes, every little thing that, and he sings the whole chorus back to me. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. He goes, this song, and he just grabs me and hugs me. And I was like, this is great. I love this, so he knew that one.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that also, I was thinking about a point with that is we're talking about all these iconic hits that you've written, mostly in country.
Yeah.
What is it? How is it different, or is it different with, songs that you've written for say Bon Jovi?
Well, the Bon Jovi thing actually happened because of Maze. So we were out at the Grammys, got nominated for a Grammy. We lost to Shania Twain, but we were nominated. So Grammy nominated songwriter is not terrible. But we were out there, and this guy that was running the label that the guys were on, John Klaudner was the dude, and he's got a history with Aerosmith and just a bunch of rock bands. So we somehow meet John, and we're sitting down there, and he goes, I want to get Bon Jovi, the guys, Richie Sambora and John, they want to come to Nashville and do a writing trip. And, I'd love to have you write with them. I was like, hey, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so didn't think that much about it. But there was something set up. And so I've got these names in my schedule. And so that morning, I was like, and I had a little ranch house just west of Green Hills, just a little bit. And they were scheduled to write with me as, John Bon Jovi, Richie Sambora. And I was like, well, I hadn't really heard from anybody, but I've got this in my schedule. They have my information. So, just thinking this could or could not happen. Anyway, whatever. I think it was an 11 o'clock start time. About 10 minutes before 11, my phone rings. And I was like, hello. And he goes, hey, this is John. We'll be there in about 10 minutes. I was like, holy cow. John Bon Jovi and Richie are coming to my house, my little ranch house. Because, I was starting a success, but I didn't, I had a decent little ranch house. Anyway, so next thing I know, here comes this black SUV, pulls up, and it's, John and Richie, and here they come. They walk in, and they're working on the Bounce record. And, John's a very good songwriter, and he knows what he wants. We sat there in I had a little writing room, and Richie was always kind of the clown, kind of having fun, cutting jokes, and, making everybody smile, and John's very serious. And I don't know, we wrote this crazy little song and ended up on that Bounce record, not in the States, but it's on it's weird, it's on some European and versions. I have one of the when we had Tower Records here, I actually was walking through Tower Records one day and I saw it. I was like, there it is, it's actually on. They had an import. So it was pretty cool. But that was just, kind of follow John's lead, and Richie was playing some amazing guitar. But that's one of those surreal moments, you're just like, these guys are in my house. And, and Jewel was, I've written with her, but she was actually working on, somewhat country based stuff. And she did a couple records that were recorded here. So
yeah. What advice would you give a new songwriter that's coming to town now with how things have changed since '93 when you got here?
Well, my nephew is a good example. He's just turned 20. He started at Belmont. And I mean, he had his uncle, me, to give him some good pointers. But I think super important is, learn from people who are already here, meet those people, but also get out there and meet your crew. I mean, if I look at my career, look at Chris and Amy. I mean, we landed here at the same time. So I think it's a blend of try to meet some people and learn from the established writers, but also figure out who your class is. And it happens again and again. I mean, if you look at whatever team or crew, like Morgan Wallen's, there's kind of a little group of guys that kind of landed here at the same time and worked together, and it happens. And so I think there's value in the new and the let's get them, kind of like, okay, well, we're after you. We're going to chase that and we're going to become the new thing, And then also, try to, if you can, meet and learn from an established writer who's had a hit or two or three. That's good too, I would say when you get those rights, I would say come in with some stuff. I mean, I'm fascinated by every now and then I'll have a new writer. It's either set up through my publisher or whatever. They'll come in and they'll go, and I can't wait to see the fresh, new, never heard of thought come across my table, and they'll sit down and they'll go, all right, so what do you got? And I'm like, what do I got? Again, yes, I have a lot and I have some stuff, but chances are, when I write with Lee Brice next week or when I get back with Eric, that's where my gems are going to go. So I would say if you're new, I mean, if you do have those opportunities, work, get your garden going and bring in some little pieces of things. don't expect to show up to a write and magic just instantly happen, you know. So, and that's not always, but at least, you know, try to have a little something.
Great advice. Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, like, you know, I don't even write that much anymore, but, you know, I'm constantly listening and putting in my notes app on my phone, just different ideas. Sometimes I go back and I'm like, I don't even know where this came from, you know, but yeah, I think, that's just such great advice for guys that are moving to town that, you know, start that list and don't expect to go into a room with someone like you and get a gem handed to them.
Yeah, so. Yeah. And it may not even be an exact gem when you bring it, but it could be the beginnings of something, you know, that I hear and I go, wow, that's that. I hadn't heard that one before, you know, and that's, you know, that's the beauty when you do hear and it happens again. And I love that about songwriting, because you think all the ideas are, you know, they're written or taken, and then you hear something and you're like, oh. I mean, when I heard, is it written in the sand or written in the stars, you know, Josh and Shane and the Old Dominion guys, I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, what a cool, you know, stuff like that you hadn't heard before. And you're like, yeah. And they're out there. There's a lot more of those ideas out there. You just got to mine for them and spend the time, you know, and that's the other thing, you know, spend days by yourself. I mean, when I get canceled on, it's a blessing, because now I've got a day where I can just start some things, you know, and just have fun. Go play guitar and stumble into something, or just, you know, open a blank page and just stream of conscious. Just write whatever comes to your head. Most of it's going to be gibberish, but every now and then there's a little phrase or word, and you're like, whoa, I didn't really think about looking at that phrase that way, you know? Yeah. So it's fun. I've been doing it, you know, I've been doing it here for 30 years, and I still feel like I want to get better, and I want to, you know, there's a lot more things to find out there. So, yeah.
Speaking of 30 years, you and I have known each other for a long time now, probably 17 years or so since, you know, the Franklin days. You're one of the few that's played, you know, the original listening room. Everybody thinks of Cummins Station is the first one, but, you know, you have, you've gotten all this success, and through the, you know, 18 years or so of the listening room now, I've seen so many people on both sides of it that have come in with nothing. I've seen the writers that come in, they're great writers, but they have no hits, and then they have hit after hit after hit after hit after hit, and they're still dear friends. And then I've seen the other side, where as they continue to grow, the distance then also comes with it, and you know, the fame or whatever you want to call it kind of catches up with them. Yeah. One of the things I've loved about you, you know, through the whole time is like you always are very humble. So what is it what is that to you? Like what keeps you humble in this kind of business?
Gosh, I think life keeps you humble, you know. I just think, you know, what we do is great. I mean, I love what we do. I just think it's a gift to be able to do it, you know. So the fact that I've accomplished, you know, I look back at my career and it's just like, you know, it feels dreamlike when you look back to some degree. Just, you know, I take it seriously, but I don't take it too seriously, you know.
Yeah. I love it. All right, couple more questions, then we'll wrap up. But man, thanks for taking the time. This is
it's fun.
This has been fun. Out of all the songs, whether they're one of those that's been cut or not, do you have a favorite?
People ask me that, and I don't. I have different favorites for different reasons. You know, I mean, songs have taken me places. Amazed, case in point. I met people I never would have met. I worked with people I never would have worked with because of that song. Got to go places. I still get gigs because of that song, you know. So I always love that song. I'll always love, I mean, an album cut that was recorded by Merle Haggard and Willie Nelson, because I remember Leslie Satcher, a good friend, co-writer of mine. We were Dawn Williams played a show at the Ryman, and I thought it was so cool that she had a Dawn Williams cut, and I love Dawn Williams, but she said, Marv, if anybody could record one of your songs, who would you like? And I said, well, it'd either be Willie Nelson or Merle Haggard. And I said it, you know?
Yeah.
And it wasn't that long afterwards. I'm sitting in a room with Sean Camp, and Sean and I had success with George Strait, so we were writing for George. And then he said, oh, by the way, I'm going to go play acoustic guitar for Willie Nelson and Merle on this. They're going to do another Poncho and Lefty kind of record. And I said, well, we have to write for that. And he goes, well, you know, Willie's turned down most of what I sent him. And I said, well, I have this idea, blah, blah, blah. We write the song. And they recorded, and, you know, I mean, it's never, you know, it was, most people don't even know about the song. Every now and then I'll play here, and I love that people will bring it up, and I'll do it. But, I mean, that's just a favorite just because I cannot believe that Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard recorded something that I wrote, you know, co-wrote.
That's very special.
So that's special. I don't know. I mean, that's just a hard question. I just songs are like babies, you know. It's like
that's exactly what was just popping in my head. It's like I can't remember. I think it was Victoria Shaw that said that same thing. That like, you know, it's like asking you like what's your favorite child?
Yeah, you could never do it. I mean, I love different ones for different reasons, and then I also love the new one. I love the new baby, you know. The new baby is always cute and fresh and has the, you know, the cheeks that you want to squeeze, you know. So I don't know. I mean, that's a hard one. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man.
Oh, my pleasure.
All right. So to wrap up, always end with this question. So if you are able to go back to 8-year-old Marv in California,
8-year-old.
and you're sitting here with all of this knowledge, but you're talking to your 8-year-old self, what advice do you give yourself today?
Wow. I would I don't know how or why, but even 8-year-old Marv, he was a dreamer. So I'll just, you know, I don't know, just say keep dreaming. You know, you can do it. I mean, you know, now I get to retain the knowledge and tell them. It's tricky, you know, because mentors are so important, I realize now. So if I could be some kind of a whisperer, the whisperer, I would just tell him just to keep believing, you know, because you can talk yourself out of a dream. But yeah, I would just say, keep on believing.
Yeah, I love it. Brother, thank you so much for sitting down,
dude. My pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a blast. We'll do it again sometime.
Absolutely. I love it.
All right, everybody. This has been another episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Marv Green, and we will see you next time. Thank you for listening to another episode of Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. Make sure to give us a follow on Spotify if you enjoyed this episode, and make sure you click that notification button so you can keep notified when new episodes come out. We release brand new episodes every Tuesday, and you can find us on YouTube at Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to send us a comment letting us know what you thought of the episodes. We love getting your feedback, and share this with your friends. The more we grow, the more that we can keep doing this. It's our mission to bring you all of these great stories behind the songs from some of Nashville's most iconic artists and songwriters, publishers, producers, everyone in between, and a lot of my great friends. We love what we do, and we love sharing their stories with you. We appreciate all of the continued support. Thanks also to all of our sponsors, and we will see you all next week.